For this example, we're going to find the least common multiple for these two monomials. We have a 4x squared y cubed. We have a 6x to the fourth y to the fifth. We want to find the least common multiple of those. As you go through and do that, there's a few different ways that you can find your least common multiple. You certainly can do this in your head and not show any work. If you needed to go through and show a little bit of work on this, what you could do is you could write down the multiples of 4 and the multiples of 6. That would give you the least common multiple as far as the numeric value goes. So if I start writing down the multiples of 4, it would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, and so on. If I write down the multiples of 6, we would have 6 and 12 and 18 and 24 and 30 and 36 and 42 and so on. If you're going to find the least common multiple, you would be looking for a number that's in both lists. That does happen in a few different places. I see that we have 12s in both lists. We also have 24s in both lists, and if we continued with these lists longer, you'd see more and more values that are common multiples. What we want to do though is find the least common multiple, the smallest number that is in both lists. So that would be 12. So when I write down my least common multiple, the numeric value of that's going to be a 12. And then when it comes to variables, it's very easy for us to find the least common multiple. Take a look at your values here, and we have two variables, x and y. We'll just do those in alphabetical order. So taking a look, I see I have an x squared and an x to the fourth. Whatever the highest power of x is, that is your least common multiple. So in this case, an x to the fourth. And for our y values, we have y to the third, y to the fifth. The greatest is the y to the fifth. So your least common multiple would be a 12, x to the fourth, y to the fifth. We can do the same thing with non-monomials. So let's take a look at this trinomial and also this trinomial. And let's see if we can determine what the least common multiple would be with those two. In order for you to determine the least common multiple, what we do need to have is we do need to have things factored. So I'm going to go through and I am going to factor each one of these trinomials. The first one, I have an x squared minus 2x minus 3. This is in standard form. There's nothing in common. I do have a trinomial, so I can do the add multiply method, and I see I have a 1 in front of the x squared, so I can do the shortcut method. So looking for two numbers that add to be negative 2, multiply to be negative 3. Those two numbers would be a negative 3, and a positive 1. That doesn't factor anymore, so now I have that trinomial completely factored. I want to do the same thing with this trinomial, looking for two numbers that add to be negative 1, multiply to be negative 6, and again we have a 1 in front of the x squared, so I can do the shortcut on this one. The two numbers that add to be negative 1 and multiply to be negative 6 are an x minus 3, are a negative 3 and a positive 2. So our factors would be an x minus 3 and an x plus 2. Once you have it in factored form, pretty easy to identify your least common multiple. I'm just going to work across this from left to right. The first thing I see is we have a factor of x minus 3. If you have a factor like that, if it occurs in more than one place, then we are going to choose the one that has the highest power. In this case, we have an x minus 3 to the first power, another x minus 3 to the first power, so they happen to be the same. But if the powers differ, then you would choose the largest one. Just like in letter A, when we were looking at like our x's, we had x squared and x to the fourth. Both of these had x's in them. The one with the highest power is the one that made up our least common multiple. Okay, so we have the x minus 3's written down. Next I have a factor here of x plus 1. Well, it's not in the other factor at all, so as far as x plus 1's go, this is the highest power. So we do need to have that in there. It doesn't have to be in both of them to write it down over here. Next I have this x minus 3, and we've already done the x minus 3's, but I also have an x plus 2. It's only written here in the second one. It's not in the first one at all. If it were written in both, we would pick the one with the highest power. If it's only once, you can just copy that down as part of your least common multiple.